You've made it to a new world, but how do you make a living when Earth is 100 light years away? We often focus on the engineering challenges of getting people safely to another planet, and the even bigger challenge of making that world livable once they arrive. But there's a more subtle, equally vital question at play. How do you convince anyone to go in the first place? How do you build a life and an actual economy? There's no Walmart on Mars, no Amazon Prime at Proxima Centauri, and no corner store when you run out of coffee. Even for the short hops around our own solar system, say Mars, Ceres, or the clouds of Venus, there are big, unresolved questions about how interplanetary trade would actually work. What goods would flow? Who pays the bills? What currency do you even use? And when it comes to interstellar colonies or ideological breakaway groups, the problems get even more complex. Trade might be minimal, or even deliberately avoided. Some colonies will be designed from the outset as self-contained economies, autarkies in space. They'll need to grow food, build infrastructure, and organize labor without expecting a single shipment from Earth, ever again. We can imagine futuristic technologies softening the blow, settlers spending the journey in cryosleep, or ultra-long-lived crews returning home after a profitable tour of duty, their paychecks swollen by interest and relativistic time dilation. Others might come later on other ships or awaken only after the hardest work is done, arriving to join a colony already underway. But even then, you're left with a core dilemma. How do you jumpstart an economy when there's nothing to buy, no one to sell to, and your only customer might be the mission commander? That's the question we'll be exploring today, looking at both interplanetary and interstellar frontiers, short-term and long-term prospects, intentionally isolated or quarantined worlds, and the strange new markets that might arise in the void between stars. Why an economy matters. Colonization isn't just about rockets and habitats, it's about people. And people bring more than just luggage, they bring systems, they organize, they cooperate, and yes, they trade. It doesn't matter if you're on the plains of a terraformed Mars or floating a gas envelope on a Venusian aerostat. Someone is going to either fix the plumbing, grow the food, repair the reactor, or just make coffee. And even in the vacuum of space, those jobs don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in an economy. Even the almost entirely automated ones of post-scarcity civilizations, which are far more likely to be able to settle the stars and still have trade in an economy. An economy isn't just about money, it's about value, incentives, and exchange. Whether you're bartering potatoes for radiation shielding or issuing cryptocurrency backed by deuterium credits, you still need a way to allocate resources, reward effort, and plan for the future. Without that, you don't have a settlement, you have a crisis waiting to happen. Even in systems with no money, which we have looked at before, you still have an economy and trade. Whether you've chosen capitalism, socialism, communism, feudalism, mercantilism, hybrids of them, or something else entirely, you have an economy. Even in a colony still living off Earth's care packages, you need rules for who gets what, and who does what, and who decides. History gives us a useful cautionary tale. Many of Earth's early colonies floundered not because they lacked the technology, but because they lacked a sustainable economy. Jamestown nearly starved not from poor soil, but from poor incentives. The same risk applies off Earth. If incentive structure isn't aligned, your crew won't be focused on farming hydroponic kale or fixing the air filters. They'll be hoarding MREs and bickering over oxygen rations. The truth is, an economy is how you go from surviving to thriving. It's how you scale. It's how you move beyond a camp of technicians and astronauts to a functioning society with builders, brewers, poets, and programmers. Without a working economy, you're just squatting on another rock. With one, you're building a civilization. And until you get one working, you're not building anything. That's why colonial planners need a clear idea of what they have to work with and what kind of system they want to build before they load up on the colony ship. In fact, that should probably be part of the recruitment pitch. If you're sending settlers to Markstopia or Galt's Gorge, it helps to advertise your economic model along with the seating chart. People like to know whether they're signing up for space communism, space libertarianism, or something entirely new, and investors doubly so. Of course, they may change their minds on the journey or in the settlement days. Again, until you have a functioning economy, you're not colonizing, you're camping, and space is a rough place to pitch a tent. Interplanetary versus interstellar colonies. Not all space colonies are created equal, and not all are created equally far away. When we talk about colonizing other worlds, we distinguish between interplanetary colonies, those within our own solar system, and interstellar colonies, those separated from Earth by years or centuries of travel. Interplanetary colonies have one huge advantage: you can still ship stuff. Trade, though slow and expensive, is a lot more feasible and permits a much higher volume. A Martian settlement could receive regular supply shipments from Earth, sell refined minerals or scientific data back home, and remain economically tethered to the parent civilization, at least early on. These colonies might be subsidized by governments, corporate ventures, or even crowd-funded utopian experiments. There's hope for regular communication, steady support, and a slow but real exchange of goods and services. Of course, that still doesn't make things easy. A trade route with 6-month delivery windows and no return policy is hardly Amazon Prime. A bad harvest, a broken reactor, or a budget cut back on Earth could put a Mars colony in deep trouble. So even interplanetary economies will need to lean towards self-sufficiency over time. Many may also start there from the outset, being breakaways or exiles from home. Interstellar colonies, on the other hand, do not have that option. Once you cross that vast gulf between stars, the supply chain snaps, and you're on your own. There will be no timely help from Earth. Trade is so delayed that it becomes almost symbolic. You might send back a priceless mineral sample, and your great-great-grandchildren might get the payment. You may pay off the cost of settlement by shipping back huge amounts of material to Earth at very slow speeds, to replace those used to make your spaceship. In return, the colony might pay for blueprints, data updates, or rights to use Earth-originated technologies, but all on a timescale where a single transaction spans decades or longer. That means interstellar colonies must begin as fully enclosed economic systems, not just with the ability to extract and manufacture goods, but to teach, govern, and innovate entirely internally. Their economies have to be robust enough to last without external markets or emergency imports. And any investment from Earth has to be made with eyes wide open. This is legacy building, not quarterly profits. You're planting a tree whose fruit you will never eat. There's also a cultural wrinkle. Interstellar colonies may not just be economically independent, they may be intentionally isolated. Some will be seeded by ideological or religious groups seeking a new beginning far from Earth's influence. Others may be designed to prevent contamination, political entanglement, or AI leakage. In these cases, independence isn't just a necessity, it's the point. In short, interplanetary colonies start out like distant towns on the frontier, waiting on supply wagons and telegraphs. Interstellar colonies are more like castaways, building a world from scratch with nothing but the cargo they brought and the determination to make it home. Later waves of settlers might arrive with different skills, values, or expectations, especially if they're sponsored by Earth-based groups. Their arrival can transform the original economy, introducing new markets, tensions, or prosperity, and reshaping the colony's long-term future, assuming they are welcome anyway. Autarkic colonies and intentional isolation. Not every colony is meant to be part of a grand interstellar economy. Some are designed to go it alone, by choice, by necessity, or by ideology. These are autarkic colonies, settlements built to be self-sufficient from the start and to stay that way for as long as possible. In some cases, isolation is forced. Maybe the journey home is too long, or Earth collapses before a second shipment ever leaves. But in other cases, isolation is the goal. Many of humanity's past colonies on Earth were founded by religious separatists, political dissidents, or utopians hoping to escape the constraints of the old world. Space colonization will be no different, perhaps even more so given the distance. Some autarkic colonies might reject trade and communication outright, choosing to become sealed cultural or ideological bubbles. Others might be more flexible, accepting limited data or tech exchanges, but refusing material imports or new settlers migrating to the colony. Still, those might rely on Earth or other colonies early on, only to declare independence once they have the infrastructure to support it. These decisions are not just cultural, they are economic. If you don't plan to trade, you have to make everything yourself. You need local food production, resource extraction, manufacturing, education, healthcare, and governance. You need to close as many loops as possible. Your recyclers need to work. Your habitats need to last. Your people need to be able to fill every role, from engineer to artist, because nobody's flying in to help. This creates pressure to minimize complexity and maximize redundancy, You might forego certain luxuries or entire classes of technology simply because they're too hard to maintain without outside support, but you also gain resilience. A truly autarkic colony is immune to Earth's recessions, embargoes, and political upheavals. It doesn't care if trade routes collapse because it never depended on them in the first place. Of course, isolation comes with its own dangers: cultural stagnation, lack of innovation, and the sheer psychological toll of knowing you're cut off from humanity can wear down even the most determined settlers. And without trade, there's no easy way to escape resource bottlenecks or catastrophic failures. But for some groups, the benefits outweigh the risks. Autarky offers control, it offers purity, it offers a chance to shape a new world without interference, whether you're building a libertarian freehold, a monastic enclave, or an anarchist commune clinging to a comet. And while most colonies may start with at least some connection to Earth or other settlements, many will drift toward autarky over time, whether by design or default. The farther you go, the more you need to stand on your own. Founding and funding the final frontier. Before a single shovel hits regolith or a colonist grows their first crop of hydroponic spinach, someone has to foot the bill. And make no mistake, founding a colony is not cheap. Rockets, habitats, life support systems, radiation shielding, skilled personnel, and small cities worth of equipment have to be designed, built, launched, and assembled, all before a single dime of return on investment. So who pays, and what are they expecting in return? Historically, colonies on Earth have been funded by empires, trading companies, religious groups, idealists, and speculators. We will likely see all of them again when it comes to space. A government might bankroll a lunar base for prestige, security, or scientific advancement. A mega corporation could fund a mining colony on Ceres in exchange for long-term access to valuable ores. A wealthy idealist might underwrite a mission to build a utopia on Proxima b, while a religious group crowdfunds a generational ship to escape cultural decay on Earth. Each of these funders brings their own goals and their own expectations. Some may want profit, others may want control. Some might see it as a gift to posterity or a great moral undertaking, but regardless of motivation, there's always a cost, and often strings attached. Colonial funding models might include corporate investment, with settlers effectively becoming employees or indentured workers. We might have government grants with expectations of scientific or strategic returns. Another option is debt colonization, where colonists agree to repay their journey through years of labor or resource extraction. Settlers may also crowdsource the effort, buying stakes in the company and getting some additional chunk of land or other privilege based on their stake. We also have legacy building endowments, where the return is measured not in cash, but in cultural influence or historical immortality, and that could include folks from an overpopulated homeworld, or ones with limited social mobility, buying passage, gear, and land for their proverbial second sons to let them extend the family legacy to a new world. There's also the question of timing. Do you send settlers first and figure out funding later, or do you pre-finance every Bolton bioshelter for decades in advance? The more distant or dangerous the colony, the more it resembles a speculative gamble. After all, even an asteroid mining colony might not turn a profit for decades. An interstellar colony might not break even for centuries, if ever. Indeed, you might need to allocate a sizable portion of your invested resources to paying for insurance if the settlement fails, to help attract speculators or ensure citizens that their fellows will be rescued if the colony failed, which might include simply having a bunker or orbital station with cryopods the colonists could retreat to until a spaceship arrived to tow them home and thaw them out. There are risks, and showing plans to mitigate or manage them is likely to be critical to getting missions going, but that does not mean it's not worth doing. It does mean that colonial economics will often begin with visionary thinking and a willingness to spend on futures that may not pay off in any conventional sense. A Mars outpost might eventually export scientific data, mineral rights, or luxury goods, but early on, it's all red ink and red dirt. That's why it's so important to align the colony's founding vision with its financing model. A tightly controlled corporate venture is not going to mesh well with an egalitarian commune. Likewise, a religious exodus isn't likely to thrive under shareholder pressure. Colonial planners need to know not just how they are paying for a new world, but what kind of world they're buying. Because once the ship lands, the funding ends and the real economy begins. Starting from scratch, early colonial economies. Every colony starts with a ship and a plan, or at least it should. Once you've touched down, what comes next? I tend to like massive colonial arc ships and expeditions for a reason. They are expensive, and classically you've only got a few cargo containers, a reactor humming away, some hydroponic trays, maybe a 3D printer, and a couple dozen sleep-deprived settlers who just spent 6 months eating recycled protein paste. Now what? Early off-world economies won't begin with banks or Bitcoin. They'll begin with jobs, and no shortage of them, even with robots to help. Who grows the food? Who repairs the air filters? Who keeps the reactor online and makes sure the water recycling doesn't turn into a very unpleasant chemistry experiment? These are not abstract logistics, they're your economy in action. At first, whatever your end goal, distribution may resemble a command economy out of necessity. Think mission-based rations, scheduled work shifts, and centralized oversight. Tasks need to get done or people die, even if it's dangerous or demeaning. This doesn't necessarily mean it's authoritarian, just practical. There's not much room for free market dynamics when you're still figuring out how not to freeze at night, though you could generate a gray or black market very quickly in many of these cases. The colony leadership, whether it's democratic council or corporate board, an oligarchy, AI overlord, or the most persuasive engineer, will set the rules for what gets built, who gets fed, and how time and effort are allocated. But economies are like ecosystems. They evolve. As infrastructure stabilizes and settlers begin producing more than they consume, even small surpluses open the door to exchange. Someone fixes a neighbor's equipment in return for an extra serving of real potatoes instead of printed starch. Someone else offers tutoring or entertainment, or invents the colony's first bootleg coffee substitute. Barter begins, trade flows, and if things go well, currency. Your first locally produced item in most places is likely to be bulk shielding, whether this is regolith scooped and dumped on inflatable structures, or melted ice refrozen on them, or even elaborate 3D printed plates made from metal smelted on site. Getting space you can safely store your people and gear in is task 1. Sourcing water and air comes next, and then food. It's an appropriately simple and classic economy of subsistence, getting food and shelter going. Only on Earth, water for drinking usually isn't a problem, and air never is. But on many worlds, you need to be synthesizing one or both from day one. On a planet with icy caps and little water elsewhere like Mars, your first entrepreneurs might be those who go settle the polar regions over more pleasant places to melt water, and your first big economy to emerge might be the folks who build a pipeline and power cables between a sunny region solar plant, a polar ice farm, and a big fuel plant using power to break water into hydrogen and oxygen for fuel. Of course, the system that emerges will depend heavily on what the colony was founded to do. A mining outpost built to ship platinum back to Earth will look very different from a religious commune trying to keep to itself. Likewise, a corporate-run habitat might pay wages and digital credits redeemable only at company stores, an off-world company town, while a science station could operate more like a university department, with everyone sharing lab time and grant cycles instead of cash. At this stage, the seeds of future conflict are also being sown. How are disputes handled? Who gets to control surplus goods? Can someone own a 3D printer or a greenhouse? Is the habitat public property, private property, or something in between? The answers may not be clear at first, but they'll shape the colony's future as much as any rocket or reactor. Because once survival is secured, the real work begins, building a society that people want to live in and stay in. Even the best-laid economies can falter. Over-centralization, resource exhaustion, or misaligned incentives can lead to collapse, especially when resupply is not an option. Hyperinflation, hoarding, or leadership breakdowns might doom a colony faster than a meteor strike. This episode comes out on the anniversary of a day that was a turning point for recent history, and as we imagine what future space colonies might be like, it's impossible to predict what sort of events, good and ill, will fuel their individual civilizations to help them form and become distinct. It is also a reminder that history plays a big role not just in our society, but in how we conduct science, and we see an example of that in what many call the scientific Watergate, a scandal that rocked the science world. In 17 pages, our riveting new Nebula original documentary, we explore one of the most controversial science ethics cases of the 20th century, uncovering a tangled story of politics, power, and perception. Experience a wonderful mix of historical analysis, science, and investigative storytelling as we explore an event that forever altered the scientific and medical worlds. Watch 17 Pages and more only on Nebula, where every episode of SFIA airs early and ad-free, along with dozens of our Nebula exclusive episodes and more exclusive content from other creators, including Nebula originals like 17 Pages. Get a lifetime membership for just $300 and unlock everything forever, or use my link go.nebula.tv/IsaacArthur to get 40% off, $36 a year. That's 12 months for the price of 7. Scan the QR code or click the link below to start watching now. Economic and social systems in space. An economy isn't just a machine for allocating resources, it's a blueprint for how society organizes itself. And in the vacuum of space, that blueprint may look very different from what we are used to. I also note that regardless of which system we might personally like and think works, or even what objectively does, we should assume we will see many different systems attempted in space, and likely see cases where good systems fail, or bad ones work out in spite of themselves. And our goal today is not to say which is best. Every colony begins with some kind of system in mind, whether deliberately chosen or accidentally inherited. Some might default to mission-style planning and rationing, others might arrive with manifestos in hand, ready to build libertarian freeholds, socialist collectives, or technocratic utopias. But even when the goals are clear, the outcomes often are not. One possibility we may see is feudalism, not because of nostalgia, but because the power dynamics of survival often reward hierarchy. If you control the air supply or fusion reactor, you're not just a technician, you're a lord of life and death. Settlers might end up working as vassals, trading loyalty and labor for protection and access to vital infrastructure. Habdome grants could become the new land grants. Tithes could be measured in energy credits or recycled metals. Alternatively, corporate oligarchies could dominate the early wave of colonization. These are not new. Company towns existed on Earth for centuries. In space, a corporation might own the habitat, the jobs, the utilities, and the currency. Workers might be paid in Scrip, redeemable only at the company's store, or its digital equivalent. Loyalty would not be enforced by knights, but by non-complete clauses and biometric access locks. Some colonies may try to reject hierarchy entirely, building democratic socialist collectives where decisions are made by vote and resources are shared equally. These systems might work well especially in smaller, tight-knit groups where trust is high and labor is fairly distributed. They might adopt planned economies or federated councils, coordinating efforts through consensus rather than coercion. And there's the universal basic income model, where everyone receives a fixed allocation of vital goods or resource credits, and additional effort is rewarded with bonuses or privileges. This could pair well with advanced automation, letting some colonists focus more on creative, social, or scientific endeavors instead of maintenance and survival. Of course, each model has trade-offs. Feudal or corporate systems may offer stability and clear chains of command, critical in crisis, but risk exploitation, stagnation, and resentment. Both are popular in science fiction, and we'll be examining space feudalism in depth in this weekend's Sci-Fi Sunday episode. Down a different path, collectives and cooperatives may foster innovation and solidarity, but can falter under pressure if consensus breaks down or free riders emerge. UBI-style systems sound attractive but depend heavily on reliable production and equitable distribution, no small feats in an alien environment, where even an advanced technological knowledge, absent its infrastructure, may not be able to provide a custom luxury to all. And then there's the wild card of post-scarcity systems themselves, where material needs are met by automation and abundance. Even these still require management. Someone has to decide what gets produced, how it's maintained, and who gets access if systems fail. Assume most colonists came on the voyage for a reason, and a lot of time that reason was a desire for a fresh start, a place to climb the social ladder with fewer established persons on the rungs, and free land to carve out for themselves and their families. Even among a system of abundance and people of goodwill, you'll likely have some angry jostling and resentment at best. In the end, no system is guaranteed to succeed or fail. Much depends on the founding population, their values, their willpower, and how they handle the unexpected. A benevolent free colony may fail while a greedy and harsh autocracy thrives, or vice versa. The key insight is that space magnifies the stakes. There's no outside economy to fall back on, no neighboring country to trade with or mitigate if things go wrong. Whatever system you build has to work with the people and resources you brought, and be flexible enough to evolve as conditions change. Because in space, an economic model isn't just a policy, it's a survival plan. Labor, value, and scarcity. In an economy, labor turns resources into survival, and hopefully into prosperity. On a new world where every breath is borrowed and every calorie is calculated, labor becomes one of the scarcest and most vital resources of all. So, who's doing the work? Hopefully, lots of machines are doing the heavy lifting, but most space colonies will still begin with highly skilled volunteers, engineers, medics, technicians, biologists, and builders. Not every job requires a PhD or a decade of training, ironically meaning the most specialized skills may be the least urgent at first. As the colony grows, it will need cooks, janitors, mechanics, educators, and entertainers. It may need parents, priests, or poets. Robots and AI will help lighten the load, but they do not eliminate the need for human effort. They just shift it. And if you're wondering whether you can automate the whole thing, the answer is both yes and no. If your machines aren't good enough to fully run a colony, they're also good enough to mine entire star systems, potentially even the star itself, and ship the results back to Earth or wherever the core of civilization resides. That's not a colony, that's suburban sprawl on an interstellar scale. And while that poses a lot of fascinating challenges, setting up a new economy is not one of them. Similarly, if your automation is so complete that humans are no longer necessary, then other people become optional, or even a liability. As we explored in our episode on the Hermit Hypothesis and the Fermi Paradox, a post-scarcity individual equipped with a personal spaceship, advanced 3D printer, medbay, life extension, AI companions, and immersive VR may have very little incentive to interact with others. When survival, production, and entertainment are all internally managed, and all you need is raw materials, social cooperation becomes a potential threat, not a necessity. And living on a planet with other people is surrounding yourself with millions of potential threats who can each replicate WMDs for no actual tangible benefit. On the other hand, if people do need to work and cooperate, we have a need for civilization and economy. That's why our colony's incentive model matters. Will people be paid wages, assigned duties, trade favors? In a startup colony, the line between work and life can blur quickly. The same hands that fix the oxygen scrubbers might also lead the weekly movie night or tend extra herbs in the greenhouse. Every role is essential, and most colonists will wear more than one hat. Even in the absence of an official currency, you're likely to get one that develops, possibly of exchange favors, possibly a commodity currency trading some desired item. If your world develops a black market for moonshine because it's banned, then even folks who don't drink moonshine start using pints of it for trading other things. As we mentioned earlier, almost any colonization plan is likely to begin with at least some semblance of a command economy in play. And for those not happy to wait on a normal economy to replace it, or to tolerate parts of it they dislike, your moonshine-style commodity currency is very likely to make an appearance, and either serve as the basis for the economy that emerges, or as a relic influencing the planned one as it gets deployed. All this raises some thorny questions. What kind of labor is valued? Who decides what counts as productive? And what happens when the job no one wants, cleaning latrines, clearing dust filters, or mining regolith, still needs to get done? We should never assume robots simply replace undesirable jobs and leave the desired ones behind. Some colonies may assign undesirable jobs on a rotational basis, others might offer bonuses, privileges, or extra rations to incentivize them. A more troubling option is to import a secondary labor class: prisoners, conscripts, or economically desperate volunteers. In theory, this could be voluntary and mutually beneficial. Someone serving a decade-long sentence for armed robbery might gladly trade it for a decade of hard labor as a settler. Likewise, someone unable to afford the cost of interstellar passage might jump at the chance to start a new life on a growing world, if the alternative is stagnation on overpopulated Earth. But let's not kid ourselves. If you're offering passage in exchange for years of indentured labor, you're skirting dangerously close to the darker chapters of Earth's colonial past. It might not be sailing ships and sugar plantations anymore, but the ethical concerns remain. That said, space colonies will almost certainly have access to labor-saving machines, and in most cases, automation will be cheaper, safer, and more efficient than using people for brute force tasks. Chain gangs probably won't be the backbone of any serious colonial economy. Still, the machines don't run themselves. Automation helps, but does not eliminate the problem. Robots need maintenance, AI needs oversight, unless you decide to mass-produce truly autonomous, human-level intelligent machines. And if that's the case, let's be blunt. If you're still colonizing planets at all, you're probably doing it as their pets. Short of that, complex tasks still require humans in the loop, especially in the unpredictable environment of early colonial life. Sometimes it's not just about efficiency, it's about creativity, flexibility, and having someone to trust when everything goes sideways. Then there's the question of what labor produces. On Earth, we take a lot for granted. Air is free, water is cheap, food is available. Colony world, these may be the most precious things in existence. Scarcity reshapes value. A hot shower might be more valuable than gold. A fresh tomato might be a rare luxury. Leisure time, a moment to read, paint, or rest, might be the most sought-after currency of all. Value becomes personal, contextual, and fluid. Likewise, what's valuable to Earth may not be useful on site. A rare isotope mined from a neutron star might fetch a fortune back home, but means nothing if your colony lacks clean water or working toilets. External value and internal needs are not always aligned. This tension shapes the colony's priorities. Do you focus on producing surplus goods for trade, or ensure local resilience first? Do you allocate labor toward export industries or education and comfort? The answers depend not just on economics, but on identity. Who do you want your people to become? Ultimately, the labor economy of a colony is less about managing people as units of production and more about building a shared future, because in the long run, value isn't just what you extract from a place, it's what you build with the people who live there. From Scrip to civilization, currency, collapse, and the future. As any economist would tell you, money is a tool, but one that only works if people believe in it. The belief may take many forms in a colony. Some will stick with Earth currencies, tied to accounts back home. Others might develop their own local credits, tokens, or even reputation-based systems. And where trust is low, barter or commodity currencies often emerge. Moonshine, coffee, or freeze-dried strawberries traded as tender. But small, isolated economies are fragile. A single crop failure, tech loss, or political dispute can throw things into chaos. Black markets may spring up to fill needs or exploit shortages, and when power consolidates too tightly, the economy becomes a lever of control. The difference between a ration token and a bribe might be no more than who's holding the clipboard. Still, some colonies will survive and thrive. As they stabilize and grow, internal economies become more complex. Trade routes may form between settlements, local industries might specialize, creating the beginnings of interplanetary or interstellar market network. A fuel-producing base on Europa might supply ships to a Martian port, which in turn trades software or biotech with a Lagrange point research hub. Over time, the outpost becomes a town, the supply cache becomes a warehouse, the ration card becomes a credit card, and somewhere down that line, the settlement that began with shared chores and scavenged gear issues its first public stock offering, or its first constitution. Of course, not every colony will get that far. Some will fail, some will be absorbed, and some will choose to remain small and self-sufficient. Some may collapse and rise up better from the ashes, or have their ruins settled by another expedition centuries later. And everyone that does survive adds the growing framework of a spacefaring civilization. Because ultimately, a colony's economy isn't just how it makes money, it's how it makes meaning. It's the pattern of effort, reward, risk, and hope that turns a few hundred people in a tin can into a living culture. You cannot simply spend your way to a new world, but you just might build one if you get the economics right.